What if the most powerful healing meals in human history were never lost, but simply forgotten? While billions are spent on supplements, protein powders, and the latest superfoods that didn't even exist 5 years ago, the Bible quietly documented specific meals, real dishes, real ingredients, and real combinations that modern clinical science is now proving can reverse inflammation, restore the gut, stabilize blood sugar, and protect the brain at the cellular level. These weren't merely ceremonial foods or metaphors. They were pots of actual medicine simmering over actual fires, eaten by people who lived, worked, and survived in some of the harshest conditions on earth. And they thrived. Today, I'm going to walk you through 20 of those meals. These are 20 biblical stews rooted in scripture and ancient Israelite cuisine, ranked from extraordinary to absolutely life-changing. Stay with me because number 9 on this list combines two ingredients that each appear dozens of times in scripture separately, and together they produce a mineral and protein profile that modern sports nutritionists are genuinely stunned by. And number 15, a stew so stripped down it's almost just herbs and water, was used in ritual purification for centuries. When researchers finally analyzed what was in those herbs, they realized the ritual wasn't symbolic at all. It was medicine. If you want ancient wisdom with the science to back it up delivered to you every single week, hit subscribe right now. Let's get into it. We start here because this is the most famous stew in all of Scripture and one of the most nutritionally complete meals ever described in ancient literature. In Genesis 25, Esau comes in from the field exhausted and starving. He sees his brother Jacob cooking a pot of red lentil stew and makes one of the most dramatic trades in human history, his entire birthright for a single bowl. Scholars have debated Esau's judgment for millennia, but they rarely discuss the fact that in the ancient world, that stew wasn't just food, it was restoration in a bowl. Red lentils combined with garlic, onions, and olive oil deliver something remarkable. Lentils are one of the highest plant-based sources of protein on Earth, providing around 18 grams per cooked cup alongside iron, folate, and magnesium. Garlic contributes allicin, a broad-spectrum antimicrobial. Onions add quercetin and inulin-type fructans, which are prebiotic fibers that actively feed beneficial gut bacteria. Olive oil's oleocanthal ties it all together with an anti-inflammatory effect, so similar to ibuprofen that researchers use the same pathways to study both. What Esau experienced when he ate that bowl, that deep, immediate sense of restoration, wasn't just hunger being satisfied. His depleted body was receiving protein for muscle repair, iron for blood, prebiotics for gut restoration, and anti-inflammatory compounds after hard physical labor. He didn't trade his birthright for soup. He traded it for a pharmacological intervention in a clay pot. Traditional use involves red lentils soaked overnight, simmered with crushed garlic, sliced onions, and cumin, finished with cold-pressed olive oil. It should be eaten as a primary meal after physical exertion or illness recovery. The soaking reduces phytic acid and makes mineral absorption dramatically more efficient. When Jesus feeds 5,000 people in John 6, the loaves he multiplies are barley, not wheat or spelt, but barley. This was the cheapest, most humble grain available. If you know what barley does in the body, that choice looks less like scarcity and more like provision. Barley contains the highest concentration of beta-glucan of any grain on earth. This is a soluble fiber so convincingly proven to lower LDL cholesterol and stabilize blood sugar that the FDA allows health claims on products containing it. When you simmer barley with medicinal herbs like thyme, hyssop, and garlic, allowing the beta-glucan to release into the broth, you create a liquid that slows glucose absorption, feeds beneficial gut bacteria, and enhances immune function simultaneously. Think about what a broth like this would mean to a community without refrigeration, germ theory, or antibiotics. When people got sick, fevers spread, or digestion failed, they reached for barley and herb broth because they observed that it worked. Patients recovered and strength returned. Modern clinical trials confirm that beta-glucan from barley outperforms oats in its effects on post-meal blood sugar. It also has documented immune-stimulating effects, particularly on macrophage activation. Traditional use involves whole-hulled barley simmered low and slow for 60 to 90 minutes with garlic cloves, fresh or dried thyme, a handful of hyssop or oregano, and a generous pinch of sea salt. You can strain and drink the broth when ill, or eat the whole stew for gut restoration and sustained energy. Chickpeas weren't just common in the ancient Near East. They were foundational. Archaeologists have found carbonized chickpeas at sites dating back 7,500 years across the Fertile Crescent. This was a staple before recorded history for good reason. A single cup of cooked chickpeas delivers 15 grams of protein, 12 grams of fiber, and significant amounts of folate, iron, phosphorus, and manganese. Combined with garlic, which ancient Egyptians fed to laborers building the pyramids specifically to maintain their strength and immunity, and olive oil, you get a dish that sustains some of the most physically demanding work in human history. Modern nutrition adds to this picture by noting that chickpeas have a remarkably low glycemic index for a legume, around 10, meaning they produce almost no blood sugar spike despite their carbohydrate content. They contain a resistant starch that functions as a prebiotic, bypassing digestion to feed the colon's beneficial bacteria directly. The fat from olive oil enhances the absorption of fat-soluble nutrients in the vegetables added to the stew. Garlic's allicin, released when cloves are crushed and allowed to rest for 10 minutes before cooking, has demonstrated efficacy against bacteria, viruses, fungi, and parasites in clinical settings. In a world without modern sanitation, eating garlic daily was a genuine survival strategy. Traditional use involves chickpeas soaked for 24 hours and simmered until tender, with crushed garlic rested for 10 minutes before adding to heat, along with olive oil, cumin, and lemon. It is eaten warm with flatbread or alone as a protein-dense recovery meal. This is one of the most remarkable clinical comparisons in all of ancient literature, even if it wasn't designed as a study. In Daniel 1, Daniel and his companions are taken to Babylon and offered the king's food, rich meat, wine, and the finest provisions. Daniel refuses and asks instead for vegetables and water for 10 days. Despite the official's skepticism, the results were undeniable. After 10 days, Daniel and his companions appeared healthier and better nourished than all the young men who ate the royal food. Modern researchers have noted that Daniel's description aligns precisely with what we now call an anti-inflammatory, plant-based elimination protocol. With no processed fats, no alcohol, and no rich animal proteins that can drive inflammatory cascades, the diet consisted of lentils, root vegetables, leafy greens, water, and the herbs and spices of the ancient Levantine kitchen. The plant compounds in this kind of stew, flavonoids, carotenoids, and glucosinolates from bitter vegetables, collectively reduce systemic inflammation, support phase 2 liver detoxification enzymes, and provide the gut microbiome with the diverse plant fibers it needs to maintain barrier integrity. Hippocrates and Daniel arrived at the same conclusion from different directions. Let food be medicine. Traditional use includes lentils, root vegetables like carrots, turnips, and parsnips, leafy greens like kale or chard, water or vegetable broth, garlic, coriander seed, and turmeric, with no salt or oil initially. This true elimination stew is eaten for 7 to 10 days when the body needs deep restoration. In Numbers 11:5, the Israelites weep in the wilderness as they list the foods they miss from Egypt: fish, cucumbers, melons, leeks, onions, and garlic. The fact that they specifically mourn leeks tells you something important. You don't mourn cheap food, you mourn food your body knew it needed. Leeks and onions are both members of the allium family and are extraordinary sources of prebiotic fiber, specifically in inulin-type fructans. These bypass stomach acid and small intestine digestion to arrive intact in the colon, where they selectively feed bifidobacterium and lactobacillus strains. Before anyone understood the microbiome, the ancient world was building a diet that fed it precisely. The medicinal profile of this stew goes beyond prebiotics. Leeks contain camphorol, a flavonoid associated with reduced risk of chronic disease, while onions provide quercetin, one of the most well-studied natural antihistamines and anti-inflammatories. The sulfur compounds in both support liver, phase 1 and phase 2 detoxification pathways, which is why herbalists across the Middle East used allium broths specifically during fasting and cleansing periods. Traditional use involves sliced leeks and onions, slow simmered in water with garlic, fresh thyme, and a drizzle of cold-pressed olive oil added after cooking. It is used as a daily broth during periods of illness or intentional detox. The Israeli tradition of breaking a fever with onion broth has more pharmacological merit than most realize. In John 21, after the resurrection, Jesus meets his disciples on the shore of the Sea of Galilee. He has already built a charcoal fire with fish cooking on it and invites them to bring more. This wasn't a symbolic gesture. It was a real, simple, and extraordinarily nutritious meal. The Sea of Galilee in the first century was teeming with tilapia, sardines, and carp. These fatty, small to medium fish are among the richest sources of EPA and DHA, the omega-3 fatty acids that the human brain and cardiovascular system cannot function optimally without. DHA comprises a significant portion of brain cell membranes, while EPA has documented anti-inflammatory effects throughout the body. When you add regional herbs like fresh hyssop, wild garlic, and coriander to a fish stew simmered in olive oil, you add antioxidants and antimicrobials that complement the omega-3 profile. The result is a dish that protects the brain, reduces cardiovascular inflammation, supports mood regulation, and delivers complete protein in a highly bioavailable form. The disciples, who were outdoor laborers with high physical and cognitive demands, were fueling themselves with one of the most neurologically protective diets in history. Traditional use involves fresh fish, preferably sardines or tilapia, simmered in olive oil and water with garlic, fresh coriander, hyssop or oregano, and lemon, eaten with barley flatbread. Modern health guidelines recommend 2 to 3 servings per week, but the people in the Gospels ate it because it was what they had. In Exodus 12, God instructs the Israelites to slaughter a lamb, mark their doorposts with its blood using a branch of hyssop, and eat the roasted lamb with bitter herbs. This Passover meal is one of the most precisely described ritual meals in ancient literature. The instruction to use hyssop was not arbitrary. Hyssopus officinalis contains carvacrol and thymol, the same antimicrobial compounds found in oregano and thyme, which are 2 of the most potent natural antiseptics known to science. Rubbing hyssop branches against surfaces was quite literally applying a broad-spectrum antimicrobial agent to protect the household. In the stew itself, lamb provides heme iron, the most bioavailable form of iron, alongside complete protein, zinc, and B12 in concentrations that plant foods cannot match. Combined with hyssop's antimicrobial and expectorant properties, garlic's allicin, and the bitter herbs of the Passover tradition, this meal was designed for a people about to make an extraordinary physical journey. It fortified them at the cellular level with iron for endurance, protein for muscle integrity, and antimicrobial herbs for protection against pathogens. Traditional use involves slow-cooked lamb with crushed garlic, fresh or dried hyssop, and bitter greens. Tougher cuts like shoulder or shank benefit most from low, slow simmering that breaks down connective tissue into gelatin, creating a broth with additional gut-healing properties. In Matthew 23:23, Jesus challenges the Pharisees for their hypocrisy, noting that they carefully tithe even their mint, dill, and cumin. The fact that cumin was being tithed tells you how the ancient world valued it. You tithe things of real worth. Cumin has been used medically for at least 4,000 years across the Middle East, India, and North Africa for digestion, blood sugar regulation, and infection. Modern research has confirmed all 3. Cumin contains cuminaldehyde, a compound with demonstrated antimicrobial activity. Studies show cumin can lower fasting blood sugar and improve insulin sensitivity in people with type 2 diabetes. It also stimulates bile production and digestive enzyme activity, reducing bloating and improving nutrient absorption. In this stew, mixed beans, cumin, garlic, and olive oil combine 3 of the most powerful gut-supportive ingredients. Beans provide resistant starch and prebiotic fiber, cumin enhances the enzymatic environment for proper breakdown, and garlic adds antimicrobial protection. Traditional use involves mixed beans like fava, kidney, or black-eyed peas soaked overnight and simmered with toasted cumin seeds, crushed garlic, coriander, and olive oil. Cumin seeds can also be steeped in hot water for 10 minutes and drunk separately for acute digestive discomfort. This is the extraordinary meal mentioned earlier. When King Hezekiah was dying from a severe skin ulcer that was almost certainly septic, the prophet Isaiah ordered a paste of figs to be pressed onto the wound in 2 Kings 20, and Hezekiah recovered. Researchers have now isolated the likely mechanisms. Figs contain phycin, a proteolytic enzyme that breaks down dead tissue and promotes wound healing. They also contain psoralens and benzaldehyde, compounds with documented antimicrobial properties. Fresh fig latex has even been shown to inhibit bacterial growth on skin tissue. When you combine this medicinal profile with lentils in a stew, you get a powerhouse of recovery nutrition. Lentils provide the protein and mineral density, iron, magnesium, folate, and zinc that a body depleted by illness desperately needs. Figs add soluble pectin fiber to feed gut bacteria and natural sugars for energy recovery. With fresh herbs like coriander and cumin, this stew functions as both recovery nutrition and medicinal food. A body fighting infection needs protein for immune cell production and iron for oxygen transport. This stew delivers all three in a form that even a weakened digestive system can handle. Traditional use involves green lentils simmered until soft with about 4 to 5 dried figs per serving, ground coriander, cumin, onion, and a finish of olive oil. The figs dissolve into the broth and deepen it. It is eaten during illness recovery or as a mineral-dense weekly meal. The Bible references olive oil more than 140 times. It was used for anointing kings, dressing wounds, and filling lamps. But its most important use was in the daily cooking pot. The Mediterranean diet, built on olive oil, has been linked in hundreds of clinical trials to reduced rates of heart disease, cancer, cognitive decline, and inflammatory conditions. The compound most responsible is oleocanthal, a polyphenol that inhibits the same inflammatory enzymes as ibuprofen. An olive oil and vegetable stew, seasonal vegetables simmered gently in a generous pour of quality extra virgin olive oil with garlic and herbs, is the essence of why this diet works. The olive oil isn't just a cooking fat, it's a delivery vehicle for fat-soluble vitamins and carries its own dense load of antioxidants. Longevity research consistently identifies populations that eat this way as outliving their counterparts. Traditional use involves whatever vegetables are in season, zucchini, tomato, eggplant, greens, or root vegetables, simmered in half a cup of quality extra virgin olive oil, water or broth, and abundant garlic and herbs. The olive oil should be generous because the medicine is in the oil. Proverbs 27:27 says, "You will have enough goat's milk for your food and the food of your household." In the ancient world, goat's milk was survival. It has smaller fat globules and a different protein structure than cow's milk, primarily A2 casein, which many researchers believe is better tolerated by human digestion. When goat's milk is used as the base of a stew with grains and medicinal herbs, it creates something the gut handles very differently than a cream-based Western stew. The medium-chain fatty acids in goat's milk, particularly caprylic acid, have antimicrobial and antifungal properties. Fresh goat's milk is naturally rich in beneficial bacteria that support gut microbiome diversity. Studies confirm it's easier to digest than cow's milk and produces less inflammatory response. This stew of goat's milk, barley or spelt, and herbs like thyme and hyssop was simple, nourishing, and profoundly gut supportive. Traditional use involves goat's milk simmered gently, never boiled, with soaked barley, garlic, thyme, and sage. It is eaten warm for digestive recovery or as a restorative evening meal. Fermented goat's milk like labneh or kefir can replace fresh milk for an even richer probiotic load. Pomegranates were carved into the pillars of Solomon's temple and woven into the high priest's robe. This fruit was considered sacred for good reason. Modern antioxidant science is fascinated by pomegranates because they contain punicalagins, which break down in the gut into urolithins with anti-inflammatory and potential anti-cancer effects. Clinical trials show pomegranate juice can reduce blood pressure, lower LDL oxidation, and improve arterial elasticity. Its polyphenol concentration outranks red wine, green tea, and blueberries combined. In a stew with slow-cooked lamb or goat meat, pomegranate juice or seeds become a braising liquid that tenderizes the meat's connective tissue, breaking collagen into gut-healing gelatin while infusing the broth with antioxidants. The result is a restoration stew that provides minerals and protein for cellular repair and antioxidants to quench oxidative damage. Traditional use involves tough meat cuts, braised low and slow in diluted pomegranate juice with garlic, coriander, cinnamon, and onion for 3 to 4 hours until the meat falls from the bone. Egyptian medical papyri lists garlic in over 22 medicinal preparations, and it is mentioned in every major ancient medical tradition for infections, wounds, and respiratory conditions. When the Israelites mourned the garlic of Egypt in Numbers 11:5, they knew what they were losing. In the desert without modern medicine, garlic genuinely protects you from invisible enemies. Allicin, created the moment garlic is crushed, is a broad-spectrum antimicrobial active against bacteria, viruses, fungi, and parasites. Clinical trials show regular garlic consumption reduces the frequency and severity of colds and flu, while multiple studies confirm it lowers blood pressure and LDL cholesterol. Raw, freshly crushed garlic is most potent, but since allicin is volatile and degrades with heat, the garlic goes in at the end of this broth. Traditional use involves a full head of garlic, with individual cloves smashed and rested for 10 minutes, then simmered briefly in good broth with thyme, oregano, hyssop, and a generous pour of olive oil. Drink 1 cup every 4 hours while symptomatic at the first sign of illness. In ancient Israel, if you had a sack of barley and a sack of lentils, you could survive almost anything. Together, these two foods create a complete nutritional profile capable of sustaining hard work and physical health indefinitely. Barley provides beta-glucan for gut and cardiovascular health, and its low glycemic index delivers sustained energy. Lentils deliver 18 grams of protein per cup, along with iron, folate, and zinc. The amino acid profiles of grains and legumes complement each other precisely. What one lacks, the other provides. This plant-based complete protein was assembled by an ancient culture that understood the outcome without knowing the word protein. Population research consistently finds that communities eating large amounts of legumes live the longest. Blue Zone centenarians across the world share the habit of eating legumes daily. Barley and lentils simmered with onion, garlic, and cumin underpin that longevity data. Traditional use involves soaked barley and lentils simmered together with onion, garlic, cumin, and dried herbs until they integrate into a thick, porridge-like stew. It is simple, cheap, and among the most evidence-backed meals you can eat. Psalm 51:7 says, "Purge me with hyssop, and I shall be clean." Leviticus instructs hyssop to be used in purification ceremonies for skin disease in ritual cleansing. For centuries, this was treated as purely ceremonial until researchers found that every single purification use made practical pharmacological sense. Hyssop contains carvacrol and thymol, the same antimicrobial compounds found in oregano and thyme. It has been shown to inhibit the herpes simplex virus, and its expectorant compounds clear mucus from the lungs. When used to cleanse surfaces and people, it was genuinely reducing pathogen load. As a broth, hyssop's volatile oils delivered in the steam act on the respiratory mucosa directly. The broth itself, simmered with garlic and raw honey, covers 3 distinct antimicrobial mechanisms. Traditional use involves fresh or dried hyssop steeped in just boiled water with garlic and lemon. Drink slowly while inhaling the steam, twice daily during respiratory illness. Add raw honey after cooling to below 40 degrees to preserve its enzymatic activity. This is the original medicated steam treatment. God instructed Moses to design the lampstand of the tabernacle with cups shaped like almond blossoms, and Aaron's rod miraculously sprouted almonds. Of all botanical designs, the almond was chosen as a symbol of watchfulness. This symbolic choice was rooted in nutritional excellence. Almonds contain one of the highest concentrations of vitamin E, which protects cell membranes from oxidative damage. They are rich in magnesium, which supports over 300 enzymatic reactions and is often deficient in modern populations. They provide monounsaturated fats, protein, calcium, and fiber. In a stew with ancient grains like spelt or emmer, almonds add healthy fats that improve the absorption of fat-soluble vitamins from herbs and vegetables. Studies show almond consumption lowers LDL cholesterol and improves gut microbiome diversity. Traditional use involves whole spelt or emmer simmered with crushed almonds and herbs like rosemary, thyme, and coriander until the grain softens and the almond fat integrates into the broth. This hearty stew sustains physical and mental work for hours. The date palm is mentioned more than any other fruit tree in the Bible and the Quran combined. Dates were currency, medicine, and survival food. In a meat stew, dates do something extraordinary. Their natural sugars caramelize during slow cooking to deepen the flavor, while their fiber moderates the rate at which those sugars enter the bloodstream. Unlike refined sugar, dates release sweetness slowly in concert with protein and fat, creating a sustained energy curve. Dates also provide potassium, magnesium, copper, and B vitamins. The combination creates micronutrient completeness, protein and iron from meat, minerals and antioxidants from dates, and antimicrobial protection from spices. Clinical trials have shown benefits of date consumption on iron levels and bone density. Traditional use involves lamb or goat, slow braised with pitted dates, cinnamon, coriander, black pepper, and onion for 3 to 4 hours until the dates dissolve into a rich sauce. Exodus 12:8 instructs the Israelites to eat the Passover lamb with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. These weren't added for taste. They were added because of what bitter plant compounds do in the body. We now know this as the bitter reflex. When bitter compounds from plants like dandelion, chicory, and sorrel hit the tongue, they trigger a cascade of digestive enzyme activity, increasing bile and stomach acid production. The entire digestive system prepares to absorb nutrition at maximum efficiency. Bitter greens also contain glucosinolates that activate phase 2 liver detoxification enzymes to neutralize toxins. Dandelion specifically supports liver cell regeneration, while chicory contains inulin, a powerful prebiotic. In a stew where these greens are simmered with broth, garlic, and olive oil, you get the full benefit without the shock of eating them raw. Traditional use involves wild greens like dandelion, chicory, or sorrel simmered in good broth with garlic, lemon, and olive oil, eaten before a larger meal as a digestive primer. In John 21, the disciples have been fishing all night and caught nothing until Jesus tells them where to cast their net. When they reach the shore, they eat a simple meal of fish and bread. This combination of fish and barley contains one of the most complementary nutritional pairings in the ancient diet. Omega-3 fatty acids from fish reduce neurological inflammation, while beta-glucan from barley stabilizes blood sugar to power the brain. The protein from fish drives muscle recovery, and the fiber from barley feeds gut bacteria. Populations that eat this combination regularly consistently demonstrate better health outcomes. It's not magic, it's the right foods eaten together. Traditional use involves fresh whole fish simmered in water with barley, garlic, coriander, lemon, and herbs until the grain softens and the fish falls from the bone. The broth absorbs the omega-3 rich fat, so you should drink the broth and eat the grain without leaving anything in the pot. In 2 Samuel 17, David's supporters bring him parched grain, beans, and lentils, warrior food for his journey. A stew of mixed legumes like fava beans, lentils, black-eyed peas, and chickpeas is one of the most complete nutritional deliveries available. Different legumes carry different amino acid profiles and prebiotic fiber structures. Together, they provide complete protein and a diverse range of plant fibers that feed different bacterial strains in the microbiome. Microbiome diversity is one of the strongest predictors of long-term health, resilience, and metabolic stability. A multi-bean stew is a microbiome diversity protocol built from food. Longevity research identifies legume consumption as a consistent predictor of long life across cultures. This food outlasted empires and kept ordinary people building civilizations. Traditional use involves any combination of dried legumes soaked for 24 hours, then simmered low and slow for 90 minutes with garlic, cumin, coriander, onion, and cold-pressed olive oil. This stew gets better every day. These 20 stews represent thousands of years of accumulated observation, a culinary medical tradition that was nearly erased by processed food. The people who recorded these foods were not primitive. They were profoundly attentive. They watched what healed wounds, cleared infections, and sustained energy through hardship. Now, centuries later, modern science keeps arriving at the same place. Alliums feed the microbiome, beta-glucan lowers cholesterol, and omega-3s protect the brain. The book was right. The stew was medicine. If these ancient healing recipes have changed the way you look at the food in your pantry, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. We are uncovering the historical wisdom that has been forgotten for too long. Let's nourish the future together. Our next deep dive into history's hidden treasures is coming soon.